My dudes, get your lubes. No wasting time here. We gotta go fast. Some of you might be too young to remember, but when I grew up, almost every kid I knew had a Nintendo. And the cool thing to talk about at school was our favorite games. We had Mario, Metroid, Mega Man, Zelda, and Castlevania. This was probably the only time the gaming community was truly at peace. And it was beautiful. This all ended when Nintendo got its first major competitor, and we got our first taste of game and drama, the Sega Genesis. The launch of the Genesis split gamers into two gangs, the Nintendo nerds and the Sega simps. And boy, were those Nintendo kids haters.
If a kid doesn't play Nintendo, is he a square?
No. Wuss.
Things were going great for Sega for a few years, but trouble was brewing. Nintendo was about to drop its new console, the Super Nintendo. Now, although Sega was doing well, it struggled to create a mascot on par with Mario, until finally showing the world Sonic the Hedgehog. With their new mascot, Sega doubled down on marketing and presented its console as a more mature machine, using terms that nobody understood, like blast processing, and at the same time telling the world that Sega does what Nintendo don't. This all ended up working out for Sega, as they actually beat the Super Nintendo in sales during the holiday season a few months after the Super Nintendo launched in 1991. Many years later, after the failure of the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast console, many of us were worried about the future of Sonic. And we've had various Sonic titles over the years, some being awesome and some being honestly terrible. However, Sonic fans tend to buy anything regardless of it being good or not. So where is Sonic now? Well, Sonic X Generations was released recently, and honestly, it's a great game. It's also been well received, but Sega thought they could sneak some changes in and nobody would notice. But we always do. We immediately saw that they've been hit with the all too common censorship that we keep seeing hitting our favorite franchises. We got the usual censored female characters, dialogue being changed lazily in order to not offend anybody, and changes that completely rewrite characters even though this is supposed to be a damn remaster. Now, I'm gonna be honest, these are not the worst changes in the world and they don't ruin the game, but they do completely mess up a few scenes, and it shows Sega's willingness to erase its own history in order to pander to activists. It's also upsetting to see that they partnered with the same sensitivity consulting group that Konami used to tone down the Silent Hill remake called Hit Detection. Now, I've talked about this company before in my Silent Hill video, but just to recap, this is a company full of activists, just like Sweet Baby Inc. And they get paid by gaming companies to comb through games in order to find and change content that could even be remotely offensive to anybody in order to modernize our favorite franchises. These people are a cancer in the gaming world, and whenever you find out one of your favorite company partners with them, just know that your favorite game is going to be treated like Dragon Ball did when it was on television. So what kind of changes are we talking about? Well, let's get the most controversial change out of the way. And hey, look, I'm not a furry, but we got some full-on censorship for Rouge here, because every company now hates femininity. Keep in mind, as usual, that there are no changes to the male characters, even though that they don't even wear clothes in this franchise, because, you know, they're animals. So not only did they cover up the cleavage, they went out of their way to cover up her back, and it clips through her wings. It looks terrible because censorship is always done lazily. They also censored the hell out of Amy's scenes and ruined her character in general. If you don't know, Amy is a Sonic simp and she's obsessed with him, which I admit is cringe, but it is what it is. In the original game and anime, she's depicted as somebody obsessed with chasing Sonic and claiming to be his girlfriend, but we can't have that. So now she's just a cheerful girl who loves to help others. Sonic inspired her to be her very best. In 2024, girls are not allowed to be attracted to boys anymore. Damn company full of feminist weirdos having a manic panic about a Sonic fanatic. Get him out of gaming. Hell, they even changed the damn ending cutscene where Sonic uses his hand to stop her from trying to give him a hug. Instead, they put her ass back in the kitchen and showed her trying to give him cupcakes as if this was somehow less offensive. To top it off, they changed the scene where she punches Knuckles so hard that he hits a tree. But portraying females as violent is too much for the modern audience, so they just completely ruined the scene. This is ridiculous. Okay, Sega, so we can no longer have female characters portrayed in any way that could even be remotely offensive. What's next? Well, there was a scene where Knuckles comments about Sonic gaining weight, and Sonic is shown holding his stomach. However, this scene was too offensive for the fatties, so they changed it to have him ask where the rest of his island is. But they were too lazy to change the scene where Sonic is holding his stomach. It makes it look like he ate the island. They even went as far as to change the word crazy to eccentric during a cutscene with Dr. Eggman, because you can't offend crazy people, I guess. Wait, maybe all these consulting firm activists are a bunch of crazy fatties. You know what? I was not gonna put this in the video, but this is for the doubters. Here's a glimpse at some of the weirdo activists masking themselves as localizers at a company called Terra Localizations. Now, I'm not gonna cover everything, but just know that this rabbit hole goes deep. Just a few months ago, they met up with the senior manager of localization at Capcom, Marco Bombazzi, also the localization project manager at CD Projekt Red, Alexander Redkovich, and finally Miriam Rayfanrath, the senior localization project manager at Riot Games back in June.
For example, you see these female characters that are more or less destined to please the male gaze. The more and more you grow up, you start to understand how messed up that is.
My dudes, I don't know why, but I have this weird feeling that this person might be covering up being biased about the sexualization of women.
Two examples that I have off the top of my head will probably be Neville and Mei Shiranui. They felt very empty and hollow. They felt like they were vessels, and their only goal was to please the male gaze.
I wonder why these characters are such a huge problem for these weirdos. Take a look at them. Now back to the characters. Also, what did she say?
Mei Shiranui.
It's not Mei Shiranui, it's Mai Shiranui. You would know that if you actually played the game, you idiot. Anyways, I had to suffer through a whole hour of this feminist slop, so let me just sum it up for you.
Male gaze.
The male gaze.
You can select the character's gender identity regardless of the physical traits. I thought that's very cool.
To disregard the gaming community in these matters, whether the traditional gamers are ready for it or not.
Okay, enough of these weirdos, back to Sonic. So they censored the game, they rewrote the characters. Did they mess up the lore? Yeah, this next change has been leaving fans and journalists scratching their heads. Some dude from the activist site thegamer.com named George Foster, he loves Sweet Baby Inc. by the way, he wrote an article saying that the Sonic X Shadow Generations dialogue changes suggest that rings aren't canon, as Sega took out a line where Tails asks, where does Sonic put all his golden rings? Look dudes, I know the remaster was made for the modern audience, so I could see how it went over the heads of some fans. But let me save you the time from trying to make all these crazy theories. It has nothing to do with lore. It was changed because somebody might assume that Sonic shoves the rings right up his ass, since he doesn't wear clothes, you idiots. The only change that I would be willing to discuss is this little dude's name here, which, believe it or not, was Cucky. They ended up changing it to Clucky instead. I don't know, I think Cucky had a nice charm to it. So what's going on here? Like I mentioned before, Sega has not only been using sensitivity consultants, they're also using localizers that push these changes. Here's an article from Japan Times. Japan to the world, how to translate a game. It covers how the Sega Team of America censors their games. Behind the global success of Japanese video games lies a delicate task, appealing to overseas players whose expectations on issues such as sexism are increasingly influencing the content of major titles. Sega, nobody but Twitter activists and weirdos are complaining about this shit. With the majority of sales for big games now being outside of Japan, everything from slang words to character costumes must be carefully considered for a global audience. Slang words, yes. Costumes, no. They're the damn selling point. Listen to your fans. Thankfully, the industry, and perhaps more importantly consumers, have changed a lot since those days. No, that's bullshit. And now we are now able to be more faithful to the cultural and emotional content of Japanese games than ever before. The Sega team says, your consumers have not changed, Sega. We've only gotten older and appreciate more adult themes in our games. And we don't want content that we grew up on to be watered down for our kids. Look, Sega, the reason your company and all major gaming Japanese companies got to where they are now is because fans love the Japanese style and approach to creating games. We do not want watered down, modernized Western slop, so you and your buddies need to fucking stop trying to emulate that crap. There's a reason why anime has almost always been more popular than US animation. We enjoy how unique and awkward things are. We like the randomness and crude humor. Get it through your damn heads. Whether you guys care about the censorship or not, I want you to understand that supporting Sega and not complaining about this crap is going to and has already impacted Sega's other IPs as well. So get ready to see more of this shit in the future. For me personally, I'm done with this, and I'm gonna call them out if they make any changes to Megami Tensei, Persona, Shiny Force, the Yakuza series, and many others. They said it themselves. Sega does what Nintendo don't, and they were right. They step on the heads of the fans that made them what they are. Peace.
君と僕が始まってゆく To be shine, to be free 戸惑わないで時の流れ